we're going to be diving into the world of sustainable cleaning solutions tailored for the marine environment. As yachts continue to embrace eco-friendly practices, understanding the impact of cleaning products on both the vessel and the ocean is crucial. Discover how to choose and implement cleaning products that not only meet high standards of cleanliness, but also minimize environmental harm. So it is my pleasure to bring back Hugo and our panelists for the session.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for that. As a deck crew member, I'm really excited to hear from both of these companies. I've got Stu Can, I believe, correct? Cons, okay. And then I have Keith Kirby from NatureSafe. I'll give both of you a chance to just give a little bit about yourself and your company. But I think from my perspective and from anyone on yachts, it's really exciting to see that we're making changes in some of the products that we're using, because both there's so much stuff that's hazardous, even to the crew that are on board, let alone to the environment once they start seeping into the waterways. So Stu, do you want to tell us a little bit more about Washdown, your goal? How did that whole thing started, really?
Sure. Thanks, Hugo. So I know there's sometimes on these forums, like especially live chat, when you're doing things very last minute, there can be a little bit of confusion. So unfortunately, Leah from Washdown couldn't make it today. I'm stepping in. I'm CEO of SKWOL Marine. We also create eco-friendly cleaning products. I can't speak to Washdown. I wish I could, because they do fantastic work, and I'm excited to connect with them in the near future. But I started this business back in November. I'm working actually more within the boating community, and I've been touching on the yachting community in recent months, creating eco-friendly cleaning products, protection products, and soon to be released restoration products as well.
Perfect. Okay. No, sorry about that. Yeah, I see the switch happen between sessions. Okay, so you're here with SKWOL Marine, and it's great. It's great to see that you're starting to get a footprint in yachting as well. So I don't have notes on you, but I'm sure we can, on the fly, we can start chatting and riffing about certain things. Keith, you want to give us a little introduction to NatureSafe and what your background is and how you got started in all of this?
All right. Well, my background is I come from renewable energy, developing wind and solar farms, moved from Cape Town to Split in Croatia onto the Adriatic, and saw all the cleaning products going straight to sea and thought, no, this is not right. Let's see what we can do to make a difference. And being a sailor in a boat, totally passionate about the ocean and making a difference. So we launched 18 months ago and making small steps, but every day upwards and onwards.
Fantastic. From what I saw, a lot of your portfolio is also very affordable, and you've got quite a wide range. You've got everything from glass cleaners to different kinds of soaps, correct?
That's right. We focused quite a lot on the internal with one or two products externally. You know, the holy grail, I think, comes to a teak cleaner. And a lot of the paint manufacturers won't guarantee their paint unless you're using their products. But we're working on something quite unique because it has a degree of hydrophobic properties in it. So, watch this space. Hopefully early in the new year, we will be launching a one-stop teak product.
That's fantastic. Again, as an avid user of some of these products, I'd love to see what it is, because there are a billion teak products on the market, but I think there's a very small niche of the ones that broadcast themselves as eco-friendly. I think Eco Teak is probably one of the few ones that I can think of off the top of my head, and not everyone has great results from it. So that'll be really interesting, and I'll be excited to see what you have there.
So a lot of R&D, a lot of testing, and oh no, that didn't work, back to the drawing board, and then you've got to work with it for a good few months, leave it in the sun and see what the results are. So it's trial and error, back to the drawing board a few times. But you know what? We're on a mission, so hopefully we can bring something out of the bag.
Amazing. And Stu, with a little bit about your portfolio, where is your bread and butter and what do you specialize in?
We actually have a hydrophobic ceramic spray coating that is our best seller, followed by a vinyl and trim UV protectant and mold and mildew preventative. So in the full portfolio is only 4 products. We originally launched with 3. The idea is to keep that product line to a minimum. We notice a lot more of the traditional cleaning product brands have a large portfolio, and some of that is often based on trend. Just certain types of buzzwords or things that you can change up on a label when you have a very similar type of product, but to just create more of an offering. We try to avoid that. And we also just try to make it easy for the consumer to choose products that work really well. And some of these types of formulas work well on many surfaces. So you don't necessarily need a unique formula for every surface. And what I think is beneficial to having fewer products is obviously you have less packaging as a result. So that's the idea, is just find formulas that work for a number of applications, limit the amount of packaging as a result, and make sure that the formulas are eco-friendly in nature when they're being used on or off the water.
Awesome. And Keith, just to give everyone a bit of perspective, because I think to everyone that isn't a boater or isn't on a yacht, it might just, okay, one product's a little bit less harmful than another one, but what are the potential harms and risks for, what's commonplacely and used in the industry right now? And why is a product like what you're putting out so beneficial?
All right, Hugo, I think there's a lot of, or many people don't understand the products they're using that well. You get your entry level guys at 18, 19 getting onto a boat, and they often use the wrong product for the wrong job. We're in the super yacht market. We're also in the charter market here in Croatia and Greece and Turkey. And a lot of that washing of the boat ends up, that wash down goes straight to sea. And, typically a lot of those are harsh petrochemicals. Your household detergents that get used on boats, and that's the problem. Our products, we have focused on the formulations. So the bulk of our formulations are in accordance with OECD 301B. A lot of jargon, but basically tested to be biodegradable in 28 days. So at the end of that period, there is no harm. There's nothing left in the water to cause any damage. Now, the majority of our products are also eco-cert, which requires a minimum level of natural ingredients. And because of that, they're slightly harder, and a lot of formulations, we get audited every year. And so it's quite onerous, but at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do.
Right. And Stu, would you say that, how does price play into all this? Because obviously we can be in our ivory towers and talk about how great it is for the environment, but the boat owner is usually going to go with just the bottom line. So how do you stay competitive in that market, or have you seen that being some pullback?
I think in the boating community, price matters a lot more, right? And in the super yacht community, not so much. Early in this business, for me, it's about making sure that the product is in as many hands as possible, just because I believe in it and I believe in the mission behind it. So I haven't, set a specific price that's necessarily highly profitable in the early days. I think it's just a matter of making sure that people are aware that the product exists, and then that you're cleaning without compromise. So just because something is eco-friendly doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be weak. I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that, the strong stuff always works and it doesn't really matter what it is. The idea is I need to get this rust off my boat at all costs.
Right.
And so I also think that we're starting to change as consumers. We're just starting to change our perspective on cheap is better. I think we know that paying, a few extra dollars for something that's more responsible is worth the extra price. And if it works, if it's high, if it has a high efficacy, then I think, it's worth the price. So for us, we don't really spend a lot of time discussing price. We definitely don't want to race to the bottom either. We want to make sure that we're not just competing with low prices, because that's not really part of the mission. So that would be my answer to that. I don't think price is necessarily a factor, especially in the yachting community. For boaters, I think it's becoming less and less of a factor. It's just about making sure that the products work while also making sure that they're safe.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point regarding just the perception that people have that stronger is better. I mean, I've worked with so many people that they just put harsh chemicals on something to get the marks off. And then you go, well, what about the paintwork? You just aged and destroyed this paint while you were trying to get this little piece of rust off by putting some hydrochloric acid or something on the paint.
Right. But they can't see that in the short term, right? And I think that's
right.
The issue, is that strong, non-eco-friendly products do work. They work too well. And right. And for such a long time, they've worked. So there's been no reason to really question them until recent years, where we have all of this data to back up the need for products like these. And I think that's the thing, right? There's an educational aspect to this to make sure that people really understand that the SDS sheets really matter, safety data sheets. So look into those when you're ordering new product. And that things like, acetic acid and sodium hypochlorite, like to know what they mean, right? To know what that means, because it's never going to be listed as we have bleach in this product or something like that. Right. And so aren't really understanding what those chemicals are is not, I think it's the responsibility of the consumer, but even more so, it's our responsibility as a brand to communicate that out and get that messaging out there. And that's where we really spend a lot of time on our social media platforms versus just showing off how beautiful packaging is or how great the product works, to really educate the consumer on what they're putting on the boat and in the water indirectly.
Yeah, that's excellent. Educating the consumer. I'm sure there's a lot of usefulness and a lot of people that are opening their eyes to, well, really a lot that they didn't know. Like you said, bleach or other harsh chemicals being in a product. I think sometimes people are really naive and they think, well, if it's in a bottle and it's being sold, it's probably okay to use. And they don't really think twice. I was told to use it for this job, so I'm just going to go and use it. And I think it's really good that you're educating at the same time. Keith, do you find in your pricing model, has that been a pushback, or in a similar sense, you're trying to get it out and then later on we can talk more about the profitability?
Right. Okay. On the pricing, yes, depending on the market level you're working with. Super yachts, they are more focused on ensuring the product is in the right place at the right time. And they don't have a lot of time in port and things like that. So there's less pushback. On the charter market, where every penny counts, there is a lot of concern, but we're addressing that. You go into Turkey now, if you're washing your boat down with toxic chemicals, you can get fined. I heard of a boat that a friend was on recently got a €2,000 fine because there was soap suds in the water and they couldn't prove that they were using environmentally friendly products. And this is becoming a real problem. So, when you start getting major fines, I think there'll be a switch. So it depends on the market as to what the price level is. But we're working on trying to shift from a ready-to-use product to a concentrate. Now, the idea there is that if we're transporting a concentrate from Split to Barcelona, 1,500 kilometers, there's a lot of CO2, and 95% of the product is water. So let's go with a concentrate. If it's in a powder or a tablet form, well, then we're actually even saving single-use plastic. So we're trying to move with the times, trying to get smarter, but it's all R&D, and we're getting there slowly but slowly.
No, that's great. And that's a really good point too, the fact of using concentrate, because one thing is very easy when the yacht's in Fort Lauderdale sitting there and you can just run out to the shop, which again, like you said, burns CO2 and it's so wasteful, but it's easy to do. And, in a frantic pace, we're all running around provisioning and doing whatever. But to your point, if you're in Turkey, if you're getting things shipped from one country to another, that's when it does matter. And that's when, having the concentrate, as long as the crew are educated to mix it with water or, DIY it, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I remember even with teak products, to go off what you were using, man, 1 gallon of teak product goes very short when you're on a 90 meter and you open up the cabinet where we keep all of them. And it's a giant room full of jugs. One, what if they, just storing that stuff in the heat, it's going to start breaking down. There's so much wasted product, but two, it's just so much space. I see there's so many products now coming in powder form and it's a godsend, because on a super yacht, even though people don't believe it, we're limited on space. So aside from the eco side, that's also one of the best ways I would imagine to market your stuff. Hey, it's going to take a fraction of the size and it's going to be, virtually just waiting there for you. It's not going to go bad. What would both of you say? I'll start with you, Stu. What would you say is the biggest pushback you get when people don't decide to buy? Is it because we already kind of tackled price? Is it more of like, we're already used to this product, we're going that way? Is it some distributors also, they don't have room for more people in their catalog? Or what are you seeing? What's one of the obstacles that you're facing in terms of getting it in the hands of people?
I think it depends on the solution itself. With the ceramic coatings, and I think those probably more apply to the smaller, boating community than yachts. So I know yachts are painted every few years, right? So not as concerned about that.
The good ones, at least.
Right. But I think it it goes back to education. Price, like you said, that there's a pushback there because certain products like UV protectants, companies like Starbright, more traditional like legacy companies can offer them at a much lower price. I'm personally bootstrapping this business, owning and operating it completely myself with no outside investment. So there's obviously challenges to compete on price, but it's education too, really understanding how to use these products and what their capabilities are and what their capabilities are not just yet. I think is one of the big pieces of pushback that we receive is, hey, I use this product and it didn't do this particular thing that I wanted it to do. So managing expectations through education, whether it's on the website or on listings, we're available on Amazon, just being really cautious, careful, and considerate about how we're talking about the products and educating the consumer, I think is probably the best way to remedy that. But yeah, that's definitely a pushback that we receive.
Perfect. And Keith, what are you seeing as one of the pushbacks for your side?
I agree with you, Stu. The lack of education, lack of understanding. The super yachts are in so many different marinas all over the world. And, it's awareness of what they're buying. So if somebody's been using product X for 10 years, to get them to try something that's now eco, it's, I'll be using this. I understand how it works. I've got limited time. And I think the time pressure has a very big impact on people because they don't want to try 2 or 3 different products. So I think what's happening now, the Water Revolution Foundation came out with the environmental crew guidelines. And this is a wonderful step forward. And, so the awareness is out there, but there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of understanding that has to be had. And I think it's a work in progress. I think if we look a few years forward, the environment will become foremost in everyone's minds. I think it's starting, but people don't know where to start. So this education process is incredibly important. We put some products on a 77-meter yacht about 3 months ago, and they love it, but they'd already bought for the entire season. It comes down to, all right, so 2025, hopefully they'll come calling. But, there's so many different moving parts. Some people buy from the provisioning companies, some from chandlers, some online. So there's, the distribution becomes quite an important aspect of the entire process. But for us, we've got to become known so people start asking for the product. So it's step by step. And like Stu, we've also bootstrapped from the beginning, and it's tough, but we're getting there. And I think we're making a difference.
I will say, I think there's an opportunity for the yachting community to kind of pioneer that, making the environment a priority. I think the aspiration of the 18-foot boat owner is 25, right? And the 25-foot boat is 40 feet, et cetera. And similar, I often go back to Tesla's approach to releasing the Roadster and then the Model S before releasing more affordable versions for the average American. So that idea of creating the aspiration and then opening that up to a broader audience is why I'm so excited to be part of this panel today and part of this discussion, because I think that there's real opportunity to pioneer, from the top down as an approach.
It's a really good point. And I fall victim to what you said. The distribution is probably the biggest hurdle, because I think in terms of buying deck cleaning products, very few times that I've been slapped in the wrist for spending too much, or even an owner coming back and saying, this isn't reasonable, plus or minus some. But like you said, Amazon, what chandleries are nearby, even the books that they put out with all of the products, like we're all used to so many of the famous names, right? Starbright, like you said, Flitz for this, use this kind of wax, that you just start penciling it in without thinking twice. So it is about educating the consumer, and just, if you can get any allies and get into those books, and once people start using your product, like you said, then it'll speak for itself. But I can imagine at the beginning, it's just the hardest thing, the awareness. What's the key for the marketing for the product? Obviously, where it's the environment, number one, what the biodegradability at 28 days. Do you also market how it's less harmful for, the human element, the crew, or is that part of the pitch, or is it mostly just the conversation revolves around the actual environment?
No, we've got to focus on basically three elements. The yacht itself, by not being harsh, by getting the job done, that you protect the longevity of the yacht. The crew, very important. You don't have to wear gloves or protective gear. So the health of the crew, Leah is very strong on VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds. So you breathe these in. And this is a big no-no. So you've got crew working in tight confines and they're breathing in all these noxious fumes. And then there's the environment. So, the environment comes in many shapes and sizes. You've got the ocean itself, you've got the transportation, and then you've got plastic waste. So we focus on those three pillars. Obviously, we've got to get the balance right. And that's what we focused on. It's got to be practical, because if it's complicated, it's not going to fly. But it's the yacht, it's the crew, and it's the environment.
Yeah, I know when you look at some of the MSDSs, it's stuff of nightmares. So it's really good that you're also promoting it for the sake and health of the crew. And
Absolutely.
Stu, do you find that with the ceramic, is that, well, I don't want to ask, is it harmful? But do you find that part of your marketing is also leaning into, hey, our products aren't terrible for you. They're also not going to cause damage to the boat, and they're also going to do well by the environment?
Yeah, similar approach to Keith's. I think one of the main things is kind of breaking down, like you said, the SDS sheets, you go in there, it's like a house of mirrors. You don't know which way is up. It's really confusing. It's written in a language you don't understand, right? So kind of breaking that down for people and helping them understand what some of that terminology means is really important, because, and it's also, I think, important for all of us to transfer those SDS sheets into material that's a bit easier to absorb. And that can be done through infographics or redesigning the SDS sheet for consumer facing content. I think that's really important. And I think when it comes to the environment, unfortunately, humans feel a bit like one step removed in a lot of cases. And this is how, right, the politics come into play and things like that. The reality is that on our day-to-day lives, we don't prioritize that. Most of us don't prioritize that every moment of the day with everything that we do. So the idea of creating content that helps people relate back to how it affects them, sometimes that selfish aspect, I think is really an important aspect in getting the messaging out there. So, like, for example, talking about PFAS and how they don't only affect the environment, but they ultimately will affect you and food that you eat, and how, as that buildup goes up the food chain, it actually compounds. And so it's a serious problem for humans as well. And when you relate it back to the human issues that come from all of this, people start going, oh, maybe I don't want that to happen, right? And they start taking it a bit more seriously. So that's an approach that we've been taking recently.
For everyone back home, what was PFAS again? I remember it's the buildup, it gets into the food chain through the animals, but what does it stand for again?
Help me, Keith.
It's basically all the phosphates, what they do, I might not know for the poly, but the phosphates, they're not aquatic toxic. But what they do is they create a lack of oxygen. And that has a really detrimental effect on products. They've also, I think in the States, you're limited to 0.5%. Anything above that is banned now. So it's really a no to use those. So it's really understanding what the SDS says.
Yeah, I love being transparent about this kind of stuff. This is not coming off the top of my head. I specifically pulled this up on the side because I think it's important, whether I know the information or not in the moment, that I'm sharing it with everybody. So polyfluoroalkyl substances, right? So they're basically synthetic chemicals that are man-made that build up in the environment. They're called forever chemicals. They don't ever go away. They can't be absorbed in the environment. And that's the main issue, is that they can build up in fish, in different microorganisms. They just compound over time. They never go away. So the more of them that go into the ocean, the more of them stay in the ocean over time and continue to pollute more and more. And then the food that you eat as a result contains PFAS, and those end up inside you, and those don't necessarily digest either. So we're all ingesting them the more that they go into the environment. And you'll see less and less products having those in the future. And it's only until, I believe, the early 2000s that we even started studying this in marine environments. And that's a major issue, right? Is that we don't have long-term studies. That's always a scary thing. So we're paying close attention to that. Our products, we're making sure are labeled as PFAS free, because I see that as becoming something that people are going to look for more and more in the near future as more of that information comes out in this community.
Right. Perfect. And that's excellent that you looked that up, because I think a lot of people will benefit off knowing the full depth of it, because with a lot of these terms, whether it's the pro-green or just, ambivalence, there's so many terminology that you sometimes have to feel like you're a scientist to really understand what the hell's going on and what's going into the stuff that you're using, right? If you're at the bottom of the food chain as a deckhand or a stew and you're just handed a spray bottle, you're just going to point and use it. And it can be really, like you said, removed from it where you don't actually see how you're affecting anybody else. Would you say that the least green part of your company is the delivery and getting it into the hands of the consumer? Or what do you think is the least efficient or least green part of the whole operation? I'll start with you, Stu.
Packaging is tough, right? Like, how do you store? And I think, Keith, what you guys are doing with powders and tabs and experimenting with that is incredible. It's really inspiring. It's something that is a challenge for us at the moment, but something that's really inspiring. I think, the single-use plastics are a challenge, right? That's the standard for storing liquids. And so if you're operating with liquids, you're not putting them in a paper bag. You can't do that. Recycled paper. You can use recycled plastics. And I believe Leia is doing that with Washdown, has a recycled plastic multi-use bottle. We encourage our consumers, it's on the label of the bottle too, that it's a refillable bottle and they can use it over and over again. Our products are highly concentrated as well, so they can be diluted. A lot of detailers and boat owners have their own spray bottles already that they dilute products into, whether it's to save money or to be more environmentally conscious. So that helps. But yeah, I think for us, packaging is something that we're really focused on and that we'd like to continue to improve on.
Awesome. And Keith, what's your retort to that one as well?
It's the packaging, it's the single-use plastic, and definitely the logistics. So, we're doing a lot of work on understanding the CO2 used to move 500 ml bottle of water, 500 or 1,500 kilometers. What does that mean? What's the implication? And so that's our focus is to reduce away from the ready-to-use into a tablet or powder form. One of the problem areas there is obviously your glass cleaner. Now, glass cleaner needs to have a very small degree of alcohol in it in order to evaporate as you are cleaning. Otherwise, you've got to take 3 or 4 times as long. And if you don't do it straight away, you end up with streaks. Now, can you imagine yachts with streaky windows or streaky chrome or stainless steel? So it has to have a degree of alcohol in it. And this is the conundrum, because I don't think there is a product of concentrate alcohol in powder form.
Right.
So that's something it's a part of the holy grail, but if you think about things long enough, maybe something drops. Maybe there's a way around it.
I would say that's where protective sealants come into play, potentially, right? Yep. Windows on super yachts, a lot bigger than some of the that we're working with, right? So it takes a lot longer and you need a lot more of it to do it. But I think the benefit in the long term is once you've applied a ceramic coating or sealant to glass, you have less cleaning that you need to do. It's much easier to clean. And so you can kind of cut down on, right? There's a balance. Ebb and flow to these things. So you can cut down on the use of glass cleaners as a result of just having that protection on to begin with. And it requires, it's in every, depending on the weather and the location, right? It's probably in every 4 to 6 month type of application, which is a lot less often.
Right. What would you say is your biggest motivator to keep going? And I'll do it for both of you. I'll start with Keith. So what to fight the trend, to fight the current, right? And pioneer products that are green, like you said, that are at least at the beginning also less, less profitable, and also just have to pour in R&D to continue to reinvent the wheel. What stops you from fizzling out, or what keeps you moving forward?
I think, living where I do, across from a marina, walking every day, going out on my boat, cleaning it, washing it down, and understanding whatever I do ends up in the sea directly. And, we have a good storm, and then around the boat, there's all this plastic waste and everything else. And it's just, we can make a difference. And if we can leave some form of legacy that to our children, we're only here as caretakers for a short period of time. And, back in South Africa, we love the game reserves. We go to the bush often, and we nature lovers. So it's sort of been ingrained in us from, just after we could walk, of being in nature. And the ocean, growing up, windsurfing, sailing, boating, it's just an extension of all of that. So I'm just, it's just something that you look out and you say, wow, how cool is this place? How beautiful is it?
That's awesome. That's very well said. And Stu, what's motivating you?
It's similar. I try not to get emotional when I talk about this. Like I grew up going out to Montauk in the summertime here in New York, and my grandfather had a fishing boat, and those are some of my favorite memories from my childhood. I'm sharing those types of memories with my kids now and my wife. My immediate family, we didn't grow up with boats. So, that was a really special time for me. And we live in a small hamlet on the riverside of the Metro North tracks in New York. So we live right on the Hudson River. It has a long history of industrial pollution, and it's really come a long way. And now still people that won't swim in the Hudson. We anchor up and swim all the time with the kids and really enjoy it, and it's only improving. And so that's something that I want to play a role in as somebody who lives in this community and benefits so much from it. I want to share that with others.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you can also see the results of, what a lot of people, a multitude of people over a couple of generations are doing. I think that's a really good factor in keeping you motivated. Because for some people, it's I can't see the difference that I'm making. I can't see the impact. But you've already seen some polluted waters turn the other way. So that's really comforting. So let's say I'm listening to this stream. I'm maybe a deckhand, a lead, a Stu, someone that doesn't have the decision-making potential to choose your product, but that's really intrigued or wants to just make an impact on the boat. Maybe not so much as getting them to buy the product, but what are some small wins that crew can be doing today, maybe with the stuff that's already there, or, at least in talking to the superiors and making an argument for being cleaner? What are some easy tips for people to be more clean with what they have and the environment that they're in? Specifically super yachts, if you want to talk boating, Stu, I know that might be easier, but we can do that. If you want to start off, Keith.
I'd say is to be inquiring, to ask questions. Why? Ask to see a safety data sheet. Try and understand what it's about. Say, can we do a comparison? Make suggestions. I think people must not be afraid to ask questions and ask for additional insight. And I think this is the future. Read a lot. You've got time. There's a lot out there on the web. And I think heads of department are now starting to say, right, we need to do something, but what? We don't know how to do it. So, I think just question, ask, and get informed.
Perfect. Stu?
I think that's a fantastic answer, Keith. Yeah, I think being informed is, the responsibility of the crew or the consumer. And I think for us, the major thing, and this is a takeaway from this conversation too, it always helps to bounce things off other folks and have that back and forth to kind of come up with new ideas. But I think redesigning the safety data sheet to be more consumer facing for companies like ours is incredibly important. I don't think I've actually seen that done well by anybody yet. And
I haven't seen that either.
Right, I've looked at plenty of it, and it's such an easy thing to do. I mean, relatively speaking. But if you have someone who's great at designing infographics, you can find them so easily, right? Like you can find them on Fiverr. There's a lot of different places to find them. So inexpensive. I do a lot of that work myself. So that's my plan for the next week is figuring out how to redesign the safety data sheets to be more digestible.
Amazing. That's a really good point. I
think that's really important. But yeah, I think asking questions, asking why is, works in so many categories. Just, trying to question and understand everything to the best of your ability, I think is really important. So that's a great answer, Keith.
I think good.
Sorry. Regarding the safety data sheets, I think there's a fair amount, in the EU, there's a lot of legislation on that. So I agree with you changing it, but you've got your 16 sections and it can be done better.
as is, right? I think like I will still maintain the same safety data sheets that I have for those who are looking to read it that are literate in that, right? But then for even something as simple as, I'm big on social media education and using that, like Hugo, what you do is incredible. And I think there's a place there for all of this conversation as well, like about these kind of products. But yeah, even for social content, things like that, creating infographics specifically intended for consumers who wouldn't necessarily even ask to see a safety data sheet. A lot of them don't even know to ask for that, right? So that's, I think just getting them to even know that exists is important.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying before about how, I'm going to go back and double back. Now that I know the name SKWOL, I'll go ahead and look you up on socials. But like you were saying, especially with so many younger and younger crew getting in, and, as we all continue to age, like the socials are here to stay, right? And that's the quickest way to get into someone's hand and ultimately their head or their heart. So I think you're on the right track saying creating content that is educating these crew, because the deckhand of today is the captain of tomorrow. So if they start seeing and understanding and digesting this information in a way that they can understand it, because they're not a scientist and they're not looking at the safety data sheets from that perspective. They just need to know, hey, how do I use this product, and is it safe, or what do I need to look out for? And if you can make that in a digestible way and introduce them to it and educate them, they're going to be able to make those decisions. Because I think almost none of us want to use a chemical that's going to burn a hole in our hand and also start killing fish and also get into the water supply or the food supply. But like you said, if we're removed and no one's really educating, then we're all in this just race to who can get the cheapest products onto the yacht so we can go on to the next thing. So I think socials for sure are a really good way of getting in front of people.
I think media in general.
Yeah.
I think media in general, right? Social media is important. I think, and I know this community has different feelings about below deck, but on a show like that, it's their responsibility as well, right? Get that messaging out there. It can be, it doesn't necessarily even need to be product placement, but I think making sure that messaging is making its way into every aspect of the community is really important.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what's just in a quick couple minutes, we're wrapping up now. If you want to tell us what's the future, the next couple of years look like for each of you, and where people can find you if they're interested in tuning in or buying some of your products, or just, a healthy look at what alternatives they should be using. Stu, if you want to start.
Sure. I think for us, we're looking to get into like short-term restoration types of products. And I always think of it, this is going to be an unpopular thing to say, probably, but I love doing this live because it makes everybody nervous, right, Hugo? Like, what's he going to say? I think like gateway drug, right? So it's like you need a lead generator, a very specific type of product to get the average person who one is not educated, or two doesn't care, or maybe three focuses on price to try a product that works really well. And what I notice is that, or at least for the boating community, oxidation is a big problem that they're always trying to solve. And they're trying to solve it with products that aren't necessarily the best for the boat or for the environment. And so creating products that give them like long-term gratification when it comes to repairing that problem, I think will get their foot in the door more. And that's something that we've been working on, but I want to make sure it's right before we release it. A lot of these other products work really well, and they've been around for a long time in one way or another, and we've been able to modify them to be more environmentally safe. But I think that's going to be a major push for us over the next 365 days, is releasing a restoration product in the form of a compound polish, like one step, that helps get them in the door. And again, I think coming out of this conversation today, taking SDS sheet information and making it a little bit more easy to absorb for those folks is going to be a big push this year. And that goes, Keith, goes for you and anybody else, Leah, if you're watching or watch after this. If anybody wants help with that initiative, I think, as small businesses, I think it's really important to help each other, right? Rising tide raises all ships is the old, but I think it's important to help each other. So you'll have my assistance anytime you want to approach that when it comes to content creation or anything else. Please reach out. Be happy to help.
Fantastic. Keith?
Super. So I think we're just going to change the model a little bit. Instead of the tripod of yacht, crew, and environment, we have to add education. And okay, sort of jokes aside, I think going forward, we have to keep looking at, for us, distribution, getting it to the people, getting people aware of it. So that's our focus for the next year ahead. We are fortunate. We will be going to the Monaco Yacht Show. We have a small stand in the Sustainability Hub. So we'll be showcasing our products there and then informing the super yacht crews of what we're about and so on. So that's the next sort of 6 months to a year ahead for us.
Amazing. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for all the knowledge that you've shared. I know this can be, for some people, it could have been a very dry subject, but I think we've made it very digestible and easy to understand why these things are so important. And it's really inspiring to see that you're both passionate about it. And like you were saying, Stu, that you want to be able to provide this for the next generation, both your kids, but Keith, you're also saying just for everyone, because I think it's very well said. We are the caretakers of this world, and what we're doing in this industry is going to leave an impact. There's so many studies that have been shown that there's a lot going on in the water that we're not fully understanding based on the last 20, 30, 50 years. And it's good to start trying to turn the tide on that. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And I commend you for also the next generation of decades and everyone on board that's going to have less marks, less bruises, less burning sensations due to your product. So well done.
Super. Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, Stu. Thanks, Andrea. And thanks, Ria. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, guys. This was not a boring session at all, I have to say. And that's really thanks to all the ones involved here. Much more interesting about cleaning products than I ever would have imagined. So we really appreciate your time. We're now wrapping up the forum. So I'm going to say goodbye to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.